All set, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of Heritage Oakville. We're meeting live again and in the council chambers, which I guess is nice, and it's much better than having a Zoom meeting. But we have delegations today, and the delegations, registered delegations, will be meeting us on Zoom or remotely, whatever the application is. If there are any members of the public here, not yet, but if they come, they are able to delegate at the meeting. We have distributed already the agenda materials, and if there's anyone watching and who would like to have a copy of that, they can go on to oakville.ca under Town Hall Agenda and Minutes, and they can get hold of that. We have 3 discussion items on the agenda today, and you will recall that we are an advisory committee and that any advice that we give will be dealt with by Planning and Development Council. It's a special Planning and Development Council meeting on Tuesday, February the 7th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. So, Madam Secretary, do we have any regrets for today?
Mr. Chairman, regrets are received from Russ Buckland and Bob Ferguson.
Okay, thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest with respect to any items on the agenda today? No? Good. Next item is the confirmation of the minutes of our previous meeting, December the 13th, 2022, which were circulated. Are there any comments on the minutes as circulated? Would somebody like to give me a motion to approve the minutes as circulated? Oh, back online again. So back into the agenda, and agenda item number 4, discussion items. Now, Sue is not here today, and she's having a little bit of sick leave, and we're sure she'll be well soon. So Carolyn's carrying the 3 items today, one of which is actually hers, and the other 2 were Sue's. So we'll have to be a little bit understanding that she's pinch hitting for these 2. So anyway, item 4.1 is a heritage permit application with respect to 304 Sumner Avenue. So Sue, you can take that. Carolyn, see, Sue's not here. Carolyn, you can take that one.
So we have a heritage permit application before us, and this is the home on 304 Sumner Avenue. It's located on the south side of Sumner, just east of Trafalgar Road. And the property is designated as part of the Trafalgar Road Heritage Conservation District. It contains a circa 1912 Edwardian-style house. It's a 2.5-story brick home with large balcony and front porch. And the application is to demolish the...
Excuse me. It's popped up now. That's okay. We weren't seeing your presentation. Now I think everybody's got it? Yep. Okay. Good.
Okay. Excellent. I'll go back just quickly. It's just showing the picture of the house and the location, again, south Sumner, east of Trafalgar Road. And it designated as part of the district. The application is to demolish the existing non-historic garage and to construct a 1-story addition with integral garage on the west side of the heritage house, so in the same location of the existing garage. And then to construct a 1- and 2-story addition on the east side of the heritage house, as well as a 2nd-story addition over the existing rear wing of the heritage house, which is not heritage. And I'll show you all that in photos to make it a little bit more clear. So this is a view of the house from Sumner Avenue. What you're seeing here in the heritage house, there's no changes proposed to the historic house. It's going to remain as you see it. Going around to the west side, you can see the garage at the back and the 1-story wing that is to be altered and built on top of. So again, this is the west side of the heritage house. I will get into this a little bit later, but the drawings are not completely accurate, so I do have a change to the staff recommendation. What you do see here in the heritage house elevation will remain as is, except on the bottom right-hand corner where that little sun extended bay window is. That will be covered by the new addition. This is just a closer view of the garage and that 1-story wing, which again will be built on top of. And this is that wing from the rear. So the new addition will go a second story on top of that and will extend a little bit to the right in the photo that you see, in the right side of the photo that you see. And then this is the east elevation to remain as is. And here is the site plan. So again, the light gray is the existing house, and at the back, you can see with the darker shaded gray outline, you can see where the new additions are going to be added. The garage being attached to the heritage house through a one-story breezeway, and then another portion on the far right that's being added to that we just saw in that photo. So here's that view. Again, the heritage house will be much further forward than the rest of it. All of the new additions will be much farther back. You can see the one-story garage with a hip roof to match the heritage house and a flat-roofed section for the breezeway connecting. The two-story addition to the rear, again, a hipped roof but kept lower than the heritage house with wood siding so that it matches the heritage house but is a little bit different in terms of materiality, and the same with the garage. So again, this is from the rear, a lot more glazing here. This is going into the backyard, facing towards downtown. And this is the east elevation. Again, that heritage portion, the heritage portion of the house. This drawing rather, does not show accurately, and I'll get into that, what's actually there today. There are no changes proposed to that elevation, but everything on the left-hand side of the drawing is correct. This is the new addition being proposed with the garage, portion you can see on the left. And again, the same thing goes for this. This elevation of the heritage portion is actually going to remain as is, whereas this shows some minor changes to the windows. Here's a rendering just to give you an idea of how it will look. The red brick two-story house remains the focal point of the property. Everything else is set farther behind towards the back of the property. The new garage is very similar in terms of its location and footprint as the existing garage, and then the breezeway will connect those two portions together. And just a closer view of that portion. So here's what I was referencing before. The above drawing at the top is what you have in your package. We had noticed that there were some changes that were being proposed that actually were not intentionally being proposed. The heritage house is to remain as is on this elevation, and so we do have revised drawings. They just didn't come in time for the package to go out. So I do have them here showing on the bottom all of the existing windows to remain and door to remain as is. And then on the west elevation, same thing. The chimney, again, this was just more of an issue of maybe things not being drawn properly. The existing chimney will remain as is. As you can see it on the bottom, it goes wide at the bottom and goes narrow at the top. Two small windows are what's there today, and then the one over one window on the top. Those are all to remain. Again, the only section to be covered by the new addition is where that little projecting bay window was. So in terms of the assessment of the proposal, the new additions are located to the rear of the property in the house, and there's very minimal impact on the streetscape. The heritage house still remains the prominent focal point on the property. The design and materials are complementary to and distinguishable from the heritage house. So again, we've got wood siding being proposed, wood windows to match the heritage house, but a little bit different from the original portion. And again, the heritage house is to remain as is. There were minor variances approved for setbacks, lot coverage, and floor area ratio. Some of these were to actually keep and improve some of the existing setback conditions towards the side and the rear, and none of them were considered to have a negative impact on the streetscape. So this was the staff recommendation in your staff report, and I've highlighted B and C. So the recommendation is that the application be approved, subject to A, the final details on the cladding, roofing, windows, and doors being submitted to staff for final approval, which is a standard condition. And then B and C was to clarify that we wanted to ensure that the existing heritage house, the west and east elevations, be maintained as is. So that's just that the existing chimney and two square first-story windows in the west elevation be retained as is, and that the existing windows and doors on the east elevation be retained as is, excluding those that are covered by the new addition. The final one is that any windows that are to be removed, every effort to be made to restore the wall with salvaged historic brick with mortar color to match the existing wall. I'll just skip to the next one. This is a new staff recommendation that we're proposing today, if the committee is supportive. And this is essentially saying we approve or recommend approval of the application that you see today before you. However, that the east and west elevation drawings dated May 19th, 2022, which are in your application, be replaced with the east and west elevation drawings dated January 6, 2023. Those are the ones that I included in the slides with the yellow ovals highlighting those correct areas in the drawings that have been corrected. So this is the staff recommendation. I'm happy to look at either of them or explain those two differences. I apologize for the confusion. Just with the timing of the reports, we couldn't get the new elevation drawings to you in time. So if this staff recommendation makes more sense and is considered cleaner for the committee, I'm happy to speak to that for more information if you need it. And I believe we have the applicants here as well joining us if you have any questions. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. Okay, thank you, Carolyn. The drawings that we got in our package were wrong, and until new drawings had been located, the way to deal with that was to simply say in the vote that you're not going to make any changes to the east and west elevation. But we've got those drawings now, and they're now on file, and these are the ones that will be in the official heritage file for this application. So it seemed appropriate to go ahead on that basis, not to sort of say, your drawing is wrong, don't do what it says on the drawing. So that's how we've tried to correct that. I think this is a better way to do it. Kathy, did you want to speak?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Carolyn, is there a proposal to do painting of the existing house? I noticed in the one rendering, everything was quite dark. So are they proposing to paint?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Duddick, no, that has not been included in the application. I think the renderings are helpful for us to give an idea of the 3D perspective of how it looks, but we do not look to the renderings for actual final details of materiality, window details, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So I think that could just be an issue of the renderings. The applicant could probably speak to that as well, but as of now, we're not approving any painting or changing to the existing cladding.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Kathy. Any other questions of Carolyn? Nope. Okay. Now I think somebody is going to join the meeting from William Hicks. Madam Secretary, can you arrange for that to happen?
Good morning, members.
Good morning. I'm not seeing you on any screen. Is anybody else seeing you? You are. Okay, well, I'm the only one not seeing you, I guess. Is that you, Bill?
I can see me, so.
We're not seeing you here. Oh, I see you now. There we go. You've appeared on the split screen. Great. So,
Slow
good.
moving, so, yeah. Thank you, members, I don't have a lot to offer. My apologies for the drawings. We had used some base drawings from a previous designer and obviously should have corrected a couple of things on it, but I did make a point to get those corrected last week. There will be some repainting done of the house, but obviously we have to obtain approval for any painting or paint colors later on, but it's in need of some repainting, but there's no intent to change the direction on what's there right now. So, and I'm assuming that's something we'd come back to staff for later on, but so it would be for maintenance more than anything else, but we're pleased with the recommendation. I certainly support the amended recommendation as well. And I thank the committee and the staff for the work we've done to put together what we think is a good application. I know when we brought it before the committee before, we had some good recommendations and we've implemented those. And I think it'll be a really quite a beautiful project. And it was one that did go to the committee and was supported certainly by planning at that point in time as a good example of how to deal with a heritage house and how to do something that's appropriate to that area that it falls within. So. Otherwise, I'm open to any questions if any members of the committee have.
Good, thank you, Bill. Are there any questions of the architect? No, good, okay, thank you. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you very much.
Right, so I don't see any member of the public here in the audience, so I don't need to ask if anybody else wishes to speak on this matter. So we're confined to the board. Any discussion? Jerry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to say that this is a lovely addition. It seems a fairly understated addition and set back nicely. It follows the rules and it respects the heritage, the integrity of the Edwardian home. And if you look at the flat-on elevations from the sides, the proportions are beautiful. They take the proportions of the existing house, whether on the side or straight on, and they follow them and retain them and work with them. It's lovely setback. It's contemporary nature, reflects the large medium-density buildings behind them, and I think it's a lovely, lovely addition. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that, Jerry. Is there any other comments or discussion? Would somebody like to give me an emotion? Thank you, Kerry. Now remember, Carolyn, could you put that up again? Carolyn? Could you put up the second staff recommendation? It's not the motion, I understand that. But can you put that back up on the screen?
Yeah, there we go. I don't have that power, Mr. Chair. So there it is. That the east and west elevations drawings dated May 9th be replaced with the ones dated January 6th.
Okay. That didn't appear on the screen, but I think we know what it was that you were saying. We saw it the
It's
first
still
time
not
around. No,
on your
it
screen?
didn't appear on the screen. But there it is.
Up
It's on there now.
there?
Okay. So that's just a technical amendment related to the staff recommendation, but that would form the basis of a motion. And so, Kerry, that would be your motion to approve that staff recommendation. Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion? Is anyone opposed to the motion? Seeing none, the motion is carried. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, members. Have a good day.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Right, item 4.2 is a notice of intention to demolish 2165 Dundas Street West. So this is Carolyn again, although it was Sue's originally. Carolyn's now taking it over today.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So here's the property at 2165 Dundas Street West. You can see it here. Is it showing up? I'll wait. There seems to be a time delay. Okay, so the property is located between Dundas Street and William Halton Parkway, just west of the hospital gate. You can see it's an oddly shaped lot there, outlined in red. So the property was listed in 2009 for its potential cultural heritage value or interest. This was for its historic farmstead, which included outbuildings historically associated with the agricultural development of Trafalgar Township. As long as it's been listed on the register, there have never been any houses associated with it, just the agricultural outbuildings. So a notice of intention to demolish was submitted along with a heritage impact assessment, and this assessment recommends that the property not be designated. However, it does recommend that commemoration be done and includes a commemoration plan within that document. Earlier, when the cultural heritage landscape inventory was being done, this property was included, and there was an inventory report done for it. And the conclusion was that with the isolation of the barn and shed and no connection to a farmstead, there's little here to conserve. It is unlikely the property will satisfy the criteria for designation under Part 4 of the Heritage Act, and the rural character of the area may be better addressed through zoning or other planning measures. It was labeled as a low priority level CHL candidate, meaning it's really not a strong candidate under Ontario Heritage Act. And it was also noted the cultural heritage resources have been lost and the remaining buildings no longer have any contextual significance. So that was reviewed from the CHL perspective. It was not considered to be a good candidate for a CHL. Here are some views of the property. Again, this is looking north from Dundas. You can just see the barn there within the trees. This is a view of the barn up close. Here's another view. You can see it's a block construction with a gambrel roof with a barn board on top. So in terms of the assessment under Ontario Regulation 906 for its design and physical value, overall it's not considered to be a representative Ontario farm landscape. The farm is not rare or unique, and there are no longer any features left except for this remnant barn. and its value is considered to be diminished due to exterior alterations that were removed and original features that were altered. And there is no high degree of craftsmanship or technical scientific achievement considered on the property. Historically, there are some limited associations with the Smith family of Trafalgar Township. These are not really considered to be significant due to the loss of integrity. And finally, contextually, the area is in transition from agricultural to residential and other uses. The building is not considered to be significant to the larger community and is not considered to be a landmark. In terms of the commemoration plan, what's being recommended by the applicants and by their heritage consultant and by staff is the integration of salvage materials from the barn into future landscape plans and site plans for the property. This would include publicly visible signage within the future development. There has been draft text included that could be put onto a plaque. Materials, form, and accessibility and placement are to be determined through a future development planning process in terms of what that commemoration structure or piece would actually look like. But the heritage easement agreement is what is recommended to ensure all of this is actually happening through any future development. So this agreement would be registered on title until the work is completed, and the town would take securities, which would again be held until the work is completed. So this is all outlined in the staff recommendation. So the first recommendation is that the owners enter into a heritage easement agreement with the town to salvage and store materials from the Smith Creek barn to be used in a new commemorative feature within the site. And again, this is in conformity with this report and the heritage impact assessment to make sure we're keeping and retaining all those commemorative features that were outlined in the commemoration plan. And secondly, that the commemoration plan outlined in the Heritage Impact Assessment will form the general basis for the future commemoration to be determined in its final form through upcoming planning applications. And the final one is just that the easement agreement be executed prior to the issuance of a building permit for the building. So this is to ensure that this agreement is registered on title and completed before any demolition could begin. And when I say demolition, of course, that would be demolition that's done in a way slowly to salvage the materials. So that's a staff recommendation. I believe there is a representative for the owner here as well, and I can try to answer any questions.
Thank you, Carolyn. I guess this is no longer a working farm and hasn't been for some time, so.
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, as long as I've been around here, it's this building has been similar, but on its own. I do believe there was one other shed, I think, at some point. There were never any homes for the last about 15 years or so. So it hasn't been a working farm in terms of outbuildings for quite some time. The land was probably still used, but the actual farmstead is long gone.
Yeah. And it's now designated employment lands, and there is development going to take place there. So
Correct.
That's all a given. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Good. Now, thank you for that. We'll get to the applicant representative in a moment, but there are any questions, bearing in mind that Sue put together the package, but Carolyn will, I'm sure, be able to answer any questions you might have of her on the stuff. Yep.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. Hi, Carolyn. I'm wondering about what the commemoration plan at the moment is quite general in nature. Do you have any idea of what is being contemplated?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't have any background on that yet, but I think the idea is that that will have to be generated later based on a number of things, based on the future development. And other experiences where we've done this, where we've worked with the Parks Department, for example, Parks and Open Space, to have the structure built within a town park. We need to make sure that we are salvaging the correct materials, but also building something that meets all of their accessibility requirements, their parks requirements. So it's hard to always say at the very beginning, at this point in the process, what this commemoration structure or plan is going to look like exactly. So that will be dealt with, but there are a lot of steps to go through to get to that point, just because we're in early stages in terms of the development. There's no development on the table that we're looking at as part of this right now. So I guess I can say is that there's nothing really that we can show you, physical, drawings or anything. But the goal would really be to retain as many materials as possible and have that identification done through plaques, through interpretive signage, and that will all be outlined a little bit more in the Heritage Easement Agreement going down the road. Hope that helps.
Okay, Brenda? Okay. Any other questions of Carolyn? Nope, okay. Now, I believe we do have a registered delegation. Madam Secretary, if you can arrange for that, we'll just wait patiently for the screen to show it up. I think it's Mr. Kevin Bushell.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Kevin Bushell, representative of Schlegel Villages, Inc.
Good morning. I'm not sure you can see me or not. I'm not up on video yet.
Nope.
Not sure. Can you hear me? Are you able to hear me?
We can hear you, Mr. Bushell,
Okay.
but we can't yet see you.
Okay.
But that's not an impediment if we can hear you. You've heard the proceedings so far. What would you like to tell us this morning?
Well, again, I'm here to answer questions more than present, but I just wanted to make a comment. Thank you for your time this morning on this application. With Schlegel Villages, we do, when we have a number of villages across the province, and they're long-term care and retirement homes are what we are proposing for this site. And we call it a continuum of care in which a long-term care and retirement is built, but also we do town halls called we're connecting, which have a number of different functions and spaces. But what we'd be looking at for our commemorative plaque would be try to create something in our town hall of the development, which would highlight the significance of the historical nature of the property, use some of the materials, that type of thing within our building, so all the residents could enjoy and see it. To put it back where the barn is really going to be stormwater management ponds, and not really highly accessible, but our thought would be to bring it into our new development, into our town square, town hall within our buildings. Which we usually try to have some sort of significant tie to the community in that space, and that's what we'd be looking forward to develop as we go forward with the application. Let me please take any questions on the application.
Thank you, Mr. Bushell. We can see, I did see your name on the screen and then it disappeared. I don't know if you've enabled your video, but we did see your name, so that was fine. So are there any questions of the delegate from the members of the committee? Mr. Gittings.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Chair. Is it Kevin that's on the line with us?
That's correct, yes.
So the future plans for this will involve seniors' residence. I'm familiar with a number of your other properties. So did I hear you correctly that when this comes back to our planning and development meeting, that you'd be willing to look at some of the items that staff had talked about in terms of the saving of materials and building it into internal or external spaces on your property to be developed to recognize the historic nature of the area?
That's correct. If you have seen our other developments, you would be familiar with our town hall type of setting. We also have exterior gazebos and whatnot for the residents. So we'd be looking at trying to incorporate the materials, design, significance into one of those aspects of our new development as we go forward.
That's good to hear. I guess my next question is for staff in terms of how we can work with you to save the materials as quickly as possible so that they will be there for you to use and provide an inventory, whether that's be through the proponent or ourselves. Carolyn, can you deal with that one?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Gittings, that would all be done through the Heritage Easement Agreement to ensure it's all done correctly. So again, to Brenda's point earlier, we don't have exact drawings of the state because the goal with starting the process now is to enable the owners to dismantle the building to actually save the materials. Often these cases, sometimes there can be vandalism happen before that time. So it's better for us to actually start the Heritage Easement Agreement now, get the dismantling done, and then work on the final details and design, just because then we can at least ensure we have those materials salvaged and stored. So typically a salvage and storage plan is required as part of a Heritage Easement Agreement. And so part of the other discussion and recommendations made by the heritage consultants on the commemoration plan would also be included in that agreement. So that's going to be what ensures the work's done. And again, we also take financial securities to ensure that work is done as well.
Understood. It sounds like we're in good hands. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Jerry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess this would be to the applicant. There is a beautiful remnant of a barn on the property, and it has unique and beautiful details of the extended, especially of the extended peak at the gambrel roof. Is there a potential to have the development in design aesthetics echo some of the heritage and historic elements of built form that is on the site to allow for continuity of the heritage story and potentially some naming opportunities for the interior of the space or the exterior landscape areas? I think, as you've heard, everybody's very interested in the landscape elements of the area, but this is a large development, and I think that some of us feel that there should be a robust commemoration plan, relative to the scale of the building. And anyway, that's what I have to say, and then I'd like to comment in the comment portion of this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions of the delegation? Nope. Okay, thank you, Mr. Bushell, for your assistance this morning. There's no one else in the audience, so we are now confined to the board. Any discussion on this item? Jerry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It saddens me to see that this is not a unique example in Oakville and in many areas of the GTA. This appears to me a demolition by neglect over the years. Unfortunately, not a lot can be done except to have a theme that can incorporate elements of the past in the new development, like everybody has mentioned here in the committee, naming opportunities, and looking forward to seeing some give back to the community. Again, just to identify that this is a large development and an appropriate development. I think the seniors' residence in this area is perfectly situated, I think, and much needed for our community. But I'm looking forward, hopefully and positively, to seeing a robust commemoration plan on this project. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jerry. Any other comments? No? Okay. So we have a staff recommendation which essentially defines the conditions precedent to the heritage easement agreement being, or the demolition permit being issued, that would be incorporated into a heritage easement agreement with the appropriate safeguards. Would somebody like to give me that motion? Councillor Duddick, thank you. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Are there any opposed to the motion? Seeing none, the motion is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is 4.3, which is the development application for 106 to 114 Robinson Street and 71 Water Street, which has been a matter of local discussion for, I think, about 20 years now, but it seems that it's actually coming to a head. So once again, Carolyn is pinch hitting for Sue, and we have a lot of material that's been given to us about this, and what we're really looking for here is essentially comments back from the committee that can be incorporated into the future progress of this application. Okay, thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll be doing a presentation just to give the context for the site and the application, and the applicants have their own presentation to provide a bit more details. So this is the site that you're all quite familiar with, it outlined in red. Again, the application that what their applicants are proposing is a zoning bylaw amendment for the two properties, again located at the southwest corner of Robinson Street and Navy Street. The proposal would have frontage onto Robinson Street, Water Street, and Navy Street. The property is currently vacant and has been for quite some time. The proposal includes 10 townhouse units with vehicular site access from Water Street. There would be individual front door access to each townhouse unit from Robinson Street and one from Navy. And they are also proposing one level of below-grade parking beneath the patios at the rear of the units. There would be rooftop terraces for each unit facing William Street. The property is not designated or listed as heritage, but is in the vicinity of multiple heritage properties. So in the adjacent to or in the immediate vicinity of the Murray House Hotel to the east, the Old Oakville Heritage Conservation District to the south, the Granary property to the north, and the Oakville Harbor Cultural Heritage Landscape, which is to the west. So again, staff is seeking feedback from the committee on their comments in terms of the compatibility of the proposed development and their impact on these heritage resources. So again, this is just outlining the Heritage Conservation District and the yellow showing the general location of the property, a couple of views down Water Street, Robinson Street, and then down towards Water Street. And again, just a closer up view of the site that we're working with. And just showing the footprint of the building being proposed. So again, there is a heritage impact assessment provided for the proposed development. It is included in your package. The consultants will be doing a presentation to provide more details. And as the chair noted, this is just an opportunity for the Heritage Committee to provide feedback on the development. And we will be taking notes, and those comments will actually be going into the minutes from the Heritage Committee meeting. And then those will be provided to staff to be using for their comments on the proposal. So I'm just showing this last slide just to show the staff recommendation is just to receive the report, nothing more. But again, we will be taking comments from the committee. And I'm happy to answer some basic questions, or we can have the consultants show a more detailed view in their presentation.
Good, thank you, Carolyn. Yes, so are there any questions specifically of Carolyn? Brenda, yes. There will be the opportunity when the applicant appears, who he may have more background information. But Brenda, if you've got a question, go right ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of questions. One is about public safety rather than anything else. But right now, Water Street, to my knowledge, is a one-way street that feeds into Robinson Street. So the proposal is showing two-way traffic. So I'm just wondering how that's going to be accommodated. The other is also from a safety perspective. I would have thought that the property's driveway would, for example, have started at the top of the street at Navy and then run back underneath to allow for a straightforward flow of traffic and not concentrate so much traffic on Water Street. Because my concern is during the summertime, there are a lot of people walking on that street. There's a lot of pedestrian access. It's a very popular area. And I can see that could be an area for a significant pedestrian injury or traffic as you concentrate all of those cars, all of the cars coming from the Oakville Club, all the local traffic for tourism coming to that corner.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think those are great questions to ask, and I'm hoping the applicants can speak to that in more detail when they do, after they do their presentation, if that's okay.
And would I be right in thinking that somewhere later in the development application, issues of traffic congestion and flow and pedestrian access would be considered, and there'd be a report from the appropriate staff department on that? Our councillors are able to help me with that. Is that the case? Yes, I would expect so. Thank you. Okay, any other questions but good comment, Brenda. I mean, that's a very real issue. Any other questions, particularly of Carolyn? No? Okay, good. I think we have Mr. Joe Laronga, who is indicated on my list as being a representative on this project. Madam Secretary, can you get Mr. Laronga onto our screen somewhere?
Can you hear me?
I think I heard you there, but I can't see you yet.
There you go. Sorry. I had to minimize the screen in order to get my to
Yep.
start video.
We
Good
can
morning,
see you now.
everybody. Yeah, so I'm deferring to our architect, Richard Wingle Architects. John Zhu has a presentation that will hopefully shed some light and more detail on the proposal. But I can answer any questions at this time if you wish. Here you go. So John's going to specifically do the presentation. So John, you can unmute yourself and I'll mute myself.
That would be good. So John, if you would go ahead, we're all ears.
Thank you. Can you hear us?
We can see your screen.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you, yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Good morning, panel and Mr. Chair. My name is Richard Wingle. With me is John Zhu, my associate. I'm the architect for this proposal. And with us today is Joe Laronga from Rosefield Properties. As well, we also have our heritage architect, Vincent Santamora, and planner, David Fay. We'll go through this very quickly. I think some of the things have been mentioned, but we'll just give you an overview of this proposal. So if we can actually please go to the next page. And this is was covered before, the boundary of the property in red. To the left is the Murray House. In yellow is the Heritage Conservation District with numbers 68 and 70 Navy Street. To the bottom is Robinson Street with the granary, and to the right is Water Street and the 16 Mile Creek. And the subject area is shown as 1,632 square meters. Next page, please. This is, again, our proposal for 10 townhouses. Previously, this is a scheme that was developed and approved as an apartment building, as a 5-story building that was stepping down along Robinson Street and had approximately a 3-meter setback to 68 to 70 Navy Street. Next page. And this was a view of what was proposed. The Murray House is to the left, and you'll see Navy Street between the building, and it was a 5-story building that started off as a brick and stone development. And next page, please. This is a view of what was previously proposed, where it went to 5 stories and stepped down in a contemporary manner down to Water Street. And you can see the original scheme, just to answer some questions, had an entrance off of Water Street. And I think the reason for that is the advantage of being able to come in underneath the building. So looking at this project, when we did start our development idea, using the entrance from Water Street does make sense because you can actually get in under the building from that point. We should note that this is only 10 townhouses, so I think being just a townhouse project, it will not have nearly the capacity of the original building. And again, in terms of direction of flow in and out, that will be determined in future schemes. And again, if it's deemed that a right in or left in and right out only is the preferred way, we can definitely deal with that. Next page, please. So this is you'll see Water Street on the left-hand side of the page with the proposed underground entrance. It should be noted this site has a delta of approximately 7 meters from the high end of Navy Street all the way down to Water Street. So that's almost a 2-story drop. And the intent for us was really to use the grade to articulate the facade and step with it. You'll see that there are 6 units, my apologies, on the right-hand side that are approximately 3,000 feet each. One is fronting onto Navy Street, that's unit number 1. And again, they're all sitting on terraces which have parking below grade. The units number 7, 8, 9, and 10 are wider, shallower units at approximately 2,500 feet each, and they're all 3 stories. And they, again, face onto Robinson. A total of 10 units with 3 floors with rooftop access and mechanical up above. And below you can see the relationship to Navy Street, 68 to 70. Instead of a 3-meter setback, we have approximately 7.1 meter setback as compared to the original proposal for the building. Next page. This is just a 3D massing model that looks along Robinson Street, and you'll see that it's highly articulated as individual units. So what we tried to do was follow the hill on the way down and stepping the buildings, creating individual units that have their own separate entrances as opposed to pairing, using a mansard roof design to conceal the 3rd floor, just showing dormers, etc. And then a traditional design that has a Georgian influence where we have a stone base with porticos, a mid-brick section with stone trim and Juliet rails, and then dormers in the roof for the 3rd floor to conceal it. We feel the scale and massing of this is definitely sympathetic to the heritage properties next door, and the use of traditional materials and detailing will certainly enhance this product. Next page. This is just a detail looking up close. You can see the way the building steps so that we follow the street line, and each individual entrance will create a separate identifiable house. The use of parapets for separation, stone detailing, brick railings, stone base, and windows. Again, mature planting in the front and individual walkways, I think will create a better pedestrian realm than the previous project. Next page. This is a view looking down from Navy Street is at the top and looking down Robinson. And again, you can see how the building starts to step down and that we have the separate entrance facing onto Navy Street that'll turn and then create a proper street facade. Next page. This is a view looking up Robinson from Water Street, and you can see the garage entrance on the very right. And again, that is something that we will deal with in future application process. But again, you'll be able to see the building stepping. And again, because of the view, mechanical space and rooftop access is hidden behind a parapet. Next page. These are just the more details. This is looking kind of over the houses, and you can start to see it looks like glass, but that's the division of the yard. So the actual garage terrace is underneath there. That's why we felt it's easier to bring it up from Water Street as opposed to trying to create a ramp trying to get down, and eliminates all sense of vehicular traffic from that component. And you'll see that all the terraces are at grade or lower because the parking is buried underneath that. Next page. Just some rear views. You'll see that the terraces on units 7 to 10 are overlooking the parking garage, and then the other units moving forward towards Navy Street are buried into the ground, again with separation, and there'll be room for privacy screens, et cetera, to afford 68 to 70 their privacy. On the top, you will see rooftop terrace access, and you'll see hidden planters to, again, create privacy for not only the homeowners, but also the adjacent neighbors. And again, in terms of scale, we feel it's still appropriate and sympathetic. Next view is another shot looking up from Water Street, and you can see the stepping of the building working with the grade. So again, we're not fighting it like the other building, we're working with it, and we think it creates a more human scale to this project. And last couple of pages, next please. You'll see the relationship of 68 to 70 Navy Street, that we have a 2-story unit that's anchored to the ground with the 3rd story hidden within the roof, and privacy along the left-hand side, which is the terrace, which is above the underground parking. Again, opportunities for some wall and planting to create privacy for Navy Street. Next page. We're just finishing up. And you'll see the relative scale of what we are proposing compared to what was previously approved in red, where it was much closer to 68 and 70 Navy Street, much higher at the back. We are now further away from the Navy Street. We are on the same line to Robinson, but lower, and again, more articulation and massing that looks more true to a residential home than an apartment building. And then finally, last 2 pages. This was prepared by our heritage consultant, Vincent Santamura, and you'll see the angular planes that are appropriate for the project were well back behind where, if you look at the top left-hand corner, there was a break in the angular plane from the original scheme. Now we're well back from that, and we feel that's much better as an improvement for this project. And then the very last page, next page please, are just some various views of the project from as many different angles as we could provide. Again, we feel this project is appropriate for this development compared to the last one, a much lower scale, much more articulated, definitely sympathetic to the heritage area and using the similar details that we've done on other projects. We've had a bit of history in Oakville. We were involved with the Randall. You may be familiar with that, as well as 5 projects for the Princess Margaret Lottery Home. We're now on our 6th one, as well as several custom residential commissions within the area that are ongoing under construction and proposed. So we're happy to answer any questions, but that's our presentation. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wengel. That's very interesting. It's certainly less density than the original proposal, which is interesting to note. Anyway, any questions? We can get comments later. Any questions of the Mr. Gittings, Councillor Gittings?
Thank you, Chair Bucknell. Through you, could you just take me through the entrance and exit again? Was it right in, right out that you mentioned?
If we could just go back to our presentation, again, that's something to still be determined. Again, if there are traffic concerns, we can certainly look at that. We can just go to our site plan. It should be on the second or third page, is probably best. Or we can, yeah, or you know what, next page? Next, sorry about that.
Page 5.
Page 5, yeah, my mistake. There we go, oh, one more, sorry, 6. There we go. So you can see on the left-hand side, it says underground entrance. Typically, if we want to prevent parking from, or traffic from going further in, it could be limited to a turn in and a turn out, meaning coming out from the underground would be a right out only to Water Street, and then coming in, just turning right in again. And again, this is something to be developed, but we look at this from a perspective of how can we minimize the impact of vehicular traffic also on Navy Street, given that if you were to create an access at the top, you would have to actually have a ramp and an extended building to hide it, and therefore forego any terracing. So we feel it's better to maintain more of a pedestrian scale at those streets, and this have a limited capacity of coming in and out from the bottom corner of the site. The one thing that's important to remember is it's only 10 units. So there's not going to be the same kind of traffic flow as an apartment building that could have 20 or 30 or 40 units in it. This is much smaller, it's 10 units. And again, traffic studies will have to be done on this, but we feel it's reasonable. Given that there is an entrance to a parking lot already beside us, we're certainly going to be less than that. So we can discuss flow of that, et cetera, but it is one way, so we may have to rethink that a bit, but something we can look at certainly. Again, this is just an initial concept, and we're going to develop that.
No, I appreciate that. So you did look at entrance on one side and exit from the other?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely the lower end is the least impactful, especially for the Navy Street residents as well. And because there already is traffic down here, again, we understand the concern, but this is a busy spot with the marina and everything else. But at the same time, it's only 10 units. So I think we'll be able to show with traffic studies that it has negligible impact at all.
All right. And the other question I had was the distance from 6870, was that 7 meters, I believe?
Yes, it's 7 meters to the wall of the house from our property.
It's 7.17 to our property line, and then there's another, the actual Navy Street house is set back further from the property line.
Yeah.
And
So
the
it's to our
opportunity,
property line is 7.17 meters.
and the opportunity for screening, I believe you mentioned, is that on the 6870 property or on your proposed property?
It would be on our property. So on the terraces, we'll be able to provide our own screening, fences and or planting as well, planters, et cetera. So the total distance between our property and 6870 is 9 meters. We're 7.17 meters to our property line, and 68 and 70 Navy Street is 1.83 meters to their property line, to the mutual property line. So the total between is 9, but our own distance is at 7.17.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? George?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a question about provisions, if any, for visitor parking, because it looks like there's probably 2 parking spaces per unit. So it'd be 20 parking spaces?
Yes, and then, so what can happen is, again, if each unit has 2 cars, there is the parking lot beside, but if not, we have provisions for at least 1 space plus a guest space within.
Yeah, but the parking lot beside is the Oakville Club's property. and you'll have problems. If visitors are in there, they'll be towed away. So that's why I just ask if you've got any consideration for visitor parking.
Right now, just the 2 per unit, so we have a total of 20 spaces for the
Well,
10.
I think that's an important thing for you to consider. It's going to come up, I think, at planning too.
Thank you. We will definitely take that into account.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions, Carrie?
There you go. Through you, Mr. Chair. I was just curious, what's the floor height proposed for each of the 3 stories?
So we have for a ground floor, we have a proposal of 10 feet for the ground floor. For the second floor, we have 9 feet. And for the third floor, we have 9 feet. Of ceiling height each.
And then this is probably maybe a question more for Kathy and Dave Giddings, or perhaps yourself as well. Is there not regulations regarding overlook onto other houses? I just remember when we were doing an application, the one before us, they had overlook. They had built a balcony on the second floor overlooking a house. Now that was in West Oakville, it wasn't. But is there regulations regarding overlook?
That's part of the zoning that's associated. So what you're referring to is something like in Ward 2, where you have, they're prohibited from having balconies, put it that way. But I don't think the zoning on this would be applicable.
Okay, thank you, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of the applicants? No? No? Thank you very much. That was a good presentation and lots of detail, and we're now confined to the board. So what we're going to do is get comments. So it's quite appropriate now to just give us comments, because Carolyn will be taking notes of these. And so whoever wants to go first, Jerry, I think, no? And then Kathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For me, this is a difficult proposal and project. I'd like to look at it from a macro level and from a comment of the collective memory of place. I can speak to this from, being born in Oakville and experiencing this little passageway for the last half century. Can't believe I said that, half century or more, that I can recollect. So there's a little bit more than half a century here. But I'd like to say that the collective memory of place, this is a site, a vibrant corner of the commercial downtown, or the experience of promenading from downtown to the lake to the creek. And, it's always been considered a communal corner, not a private corner, not a, don't cross my fence, don't cross my boundary. There used to be an ice cream store there called Scoops. It was the highlight of people in Oakville and elsewhere coming to town, walking along the lakeshore commercial area, promenading down to the lake, to the pier, stopping in at Scoops to get an ice cream, and really enjoying that whole special corner, the change in landscape. You can either meander down towards the, Oakville Club to the creek, or back up to the lake. So it holds a very special seat in the collective memory of Oakville and place and history. So I'm saddened to see from a macro level that this site is now being completely privatized to a low-density residential. And I have to say that when our presenter, the architect, showed us the previous development, higher density, of course, there were some comments to be said on that one too, but if that higher density development provided a communal plane, a ground floor, retail, commercial access to the community at large, it would be a better use of the place. there are so many amenities that are accessible from this corner that could benefit the whole of the community. So that's looking at this from a macro level. So it saddens me to see that this is being completely privatized to a very low density, only to be used by a handful of owners of these townhouses. So that's from a macro level. From a micro level, we're looking at identifying a number of give back to the community items that can be incorporated into this scheme that we haven't seen. There's a great opportunity for the daylight triangle on that corner. And I believe we talked about this on site. If you look at Ercles Estate, there's a lovely bench, gates into the community that can be incorporated, something that as people meander from Lakeshore to the lake, that they can stop for a rest, a pause. Could there be a bench? Could there be a shaded area? Could there be some entry gates that people can use as they walk to this area? This is a highly traversed pedestrian promenade area. And so we would be looking at what are you giving back? The architectural aesthetics we discussed on site as well. The development is not a bad development. It's a lovely architectural development, but is it an appropriate development in that context, in that space? There is a beautiful development from Bill Hicks on the corner of Dunn and Trafalgar that was done with a lot of research into the styles of heritage Oakville. And we talked about the mansard roof. Yes, there are a few mansard roofs in Oakville, but this particular one doesn't really speak of Oakville. It's a little bit more, it has an aesthetic that is foreign to heritage Oakville. I mean, we have more and more developments that are using this kind of aesthetic, so I'm sure 100 years down the road it will become the new Oakville vernacular, but at this point it's still not. And there are better developments that have used architectural aesthetics to echo the context of the community in a better way. And I do speak to the Hicks development on the corner of Trafalgar and Dunn. I guess that's about it. So
thank you, Chair.
Those are my points. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Kathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm of another mindset, having also been born and raised in Oakville, remembering Shelley's and various other uses of the property. I think this current proposal is a vast improvement compared to the previous one. While I appreciate the sentiment that Jerry's expressed regarding the public realm and access to the property, I don't see that on the granary. So I sort of think you're expecting something that isn't present in other properties. We don't have benches. You've got a garage facing onto Navy to that, the granary development. I think it'll still be pedestrian access. I think people will still use it. We've got quite a few. There's the one at the top of Water Street, the old, market that they have there. Like I say, I think it's a very good use, very good design. The two factors I think that have been raised are very important. The access to the property, given the use of the Oakville Club and boaters in the area, all of that is very, pedestrian accessed in that particular area. And the visiting. I think that's a very good point that George raises, because you can expect to use the Oakville Club parking lot, and there isn't parking in front of the units. So I don't know where the visitors, other than maybe going down and paying parking down on Water Street, down at the bottom behind the library. But again, that's few and far between. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Kathy. Any other comments from anyone? George?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I threw you, sorry to sort of bring this up again, but it's the traffic issue again, but it's I think it's going to be the expectation of owners, maybe I'm dead wrong, they're not going to bother coming into the property from the top of Navy, down Water Street and into the garage. They're going to cut it short. They're going to come along Water Street or down William Street, do a hard left and right into the garage, facing a one-way street with other people and pedestrians walking along it. I can just see that happening because it's so close to the corner. Or else they'll come along Water Street from the library and do a little jog and into the garage. So that's a real concern, especially if they haven't done any traffic studies, and the traffic is different winter, summer, fall, of course, but there are a lot of pedestrians there. I know as a member of the club, I have a lot of problem even trying to park there sometimes myself. So it's a real scarce item. So I think that's something they really have to consider. Thank you.
Thank you, George. So I guess that is car access and whatnot to the parking is a bit of an issue that will have to be looked at as the proposal advances. Brenda?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I am sort of in between Kathy and Jerry in that I see that this is a good scale for the neighborhood. I do see that it is lower than the building that was previously approved. However, I do agree that in terms of the styling with the mansard roof, the stonework, it isn't part of the community. And I think back to when the town had originally looked at how to redesign Lakeshore and what would be the styling that's appropriate, there was pushback to a period of Victoriana, if I can use that term. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that's necessarily to my taste, but I'm saying from a community perspective, the Georgian style, while this is lovely, it's not part of the community. And if it's trying to be sort of a balance between what's on Lakeshore and what's on below in the Heritage Conservation District, I don't think this is a good representational transition. I think either contemporary or Victorian styling or a coastal styling would be more suitable. That's my feedback.
Good. So Carolyn has taken note of all these, I'm sure. Jerry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to Councillor Dudek's comments, I think that looking at the granary as an example, the granary was a mistake. And I think if planners had to do it again, there would be a lot of differences to how the ground plane meets, to how the building meets the ground plane, and how the interaction of the pedestrians would have occurred on the corner. So we don't want to compare anything to the granary floor plane. We're not going to comment on the actual building, but it's the interaction of the floor plane with the community, and then transition between private and public that really doesn't work for the granary, and I think we can all agree with that. So we don't want to use that as an example. Having said that, I mean, there are points like the building, the planning, aesthetics aside, is not a bad scale for the corner. However, there's still an opportunity from a micro scale to give back something to the community on the triangle, on the daylight triangle, which is the public realm. And how does this building interface with the public realm? What is the transition between private and public is the important element here. I think that we can all agree that there could be some gesture made, however large, not to impose too heavily on the on the developer, but there could be some gesture made. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jerry. Any other comments? Nope. Okay, good. So all we have to do now is for somebody to move that the report be received, because that's all we're doing today. Councillor Gittings, that the report be received. Is there anyone opposed to that motion? No, the motion is carried. Thank you. Now, information items, it's showing 0, but if you remember last year, we'd built into our agenda an update on the Heritage Conservation District down at Lakeside as being something that we wanted an update, and that happened, but a little bit of a glitch fell into it as we moved from 2022 to 2023, and the system didn't pick that up. So I'm going to ask Kirk if, under information items, he can just give us a brief update of that project. And I know that staff at Clerks and Planning will make sure this item is on our agenda each meeting. Thank you, Kirk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the committee. It's our pleasure to provide an update on the Old Oakville Heritage Conservation District project. We're still in phase one of that project, which is really reviewing and meeting with stakeholders, reviewing materials. We've had an excellent amount of material submitted from the community and Lakeside Residents Association, information, inventory sheets. We've been meeting with stakeholders, so gathering information through their experiences, as well some site visits as a group and also as individuals. So it's really now going through that information and to complete the study portion of the district plan, which is a scan of all the characteristics there. And that'll be coming out at the end of this phase in draft form. And that'll be information that we'll share at that time. Likely, in the next few months, we'll be seeing a draft of that study document. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Did we get a lot of feedback to the online survey that Sue reminded us of that closed whatever number of days ago, a week ago? Did we get lots of good input from that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I haven't reviewed the submissions, but we did have a number of comments made through that portal. I think we were at about 20 submissions. That'll be part of the study review as well.
Yeah.
And if there are still, we're still receiving information, so if the committee has anything they wish to share, of course, that could come into to the department.
Good, thank you. Any questions of Kirk? Nope, super, thank you very much. So if I could have a motion that the information items be received. Kerry, thank you. The information items are received. Nobody's opposed to that. Thank you very much. Good. Now, I'm told by the clerk that our appointments that were extended across the election period kind of expire today. So, but that by next meeting, our next meeting is February the 28th, 2023. Some or all of us, plus some or all new people, may or may not be turning up at that meeting. So it's been a pleasure working with you all for the last term, or for the 4-year term that we've had together. So that's been really good. And I look forward to seeing us all back again, if that's going to happen. So as I said, that's, again, council chamber. I guess we've got a permanent booking here. I'm not sure why that necessarily is. If anybody has any real feeling that we would be more comfortable in our old quarters, perhaps you could let us know, or the clerk's department know that. It's good here, but I think there's a little less formality when we're in the Trafalgar room or the Oakville room. Madam
Yes, Mr.
Secretary?
Chairman, in the agenda email, I had indicated that Heritage Oakville meetings will be held in the council chamber going forward.
Okay, so that's been decided. Well, I'm glad somebody's looking after us, making decisions for us. Right, good. So a motion to adjourn. I think Kathy would like to give me a motion to adjourn. Nobody's opposed to it. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much again for the gift of your time, everyone. And maybe we'll see you all on February the 28th.